Actually, to get started, I'm just going to drop a couple links in the chat.
Okay.
This first one is from Shiny Conference 2023 by, I don't know if either of you got to tune into any of that, but yeah, she gave a talk on why modules matter for new Shiny developers. It's like a 30-minute talk. Good stuff in there. Yeah, I would suggest if you weren't able to make it, check that one out.
I think if there was any talk I was able to listen to, I think Haz was one of those talks. I wasn't able to follow everything, but I think Haz and that of Van, I really don't know her full name now, but she's actually a software engineer. As Van Limput or something. So you could go on, Trevin. I'll just mute and listen to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start. Yeah, so that first one I wanted to share, good resource. The second link I just dropped, this is from the Engineering Shiny book by Colin Fay, and I'm not sure who the other authors are, but this also goes into details about Shiny modules. That is they have a different framework for Shiny apps using like the Golem package, and there's a whole this is a whole book about it. But they use modules in their framework, and this is a good explanation. And it goes a bit deeper than the Mastering Shiny book. So I might point to some of that. Well, oh, great. Yeah, Lydia, looks like you attended, but didn't get to attend a lot of the talks. Yeah, that one was good in particular, and all the rest of the talks are also on YouTube now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We can get started here. I wasn't able to prepare too much, but this chapter is interesting because like this is an important concept in understanding Shiny and like a different way of thinking for how to structure your apps. But a lot of it was just showing examples of how to use modules. And here I can actually go to book, the app. Oh, I can go to the notes. So there aren't too many notes per se, but a lot of being able to understand Shiny modules is not just reading notes, but actually going through and getting into working out the examples yourself, and whether that's the examples in the book or your own Shiny apps, like that's like the key to learning Shiny modules. I mean, I think that's the key for learning like anything, but I think in particular, like especially Shiny modules, it's helpful to go in and dive in yourself to work on this. And I guess before I go further, Matthew, Lydia, I don't think anyone else has joined yet, but do either of you have experience using Shiny modules? Would you say this is like you've just been introduced to Shiny modules, or maybe you have played around with it some or have experience? Curious what your experience is.
I never used it. I think I first heard about it during ShinyConf. Like I don't think I saw the talk specifically on it, but I believe in one of the panels, like one of the speakers was saying like it's kind of changed the way she did Shiny.
Yeah, Trevin, for me, it was a job experience I had. I was opportune to work with one of the presenters at the last Shiny conference, uh, and they actually moderarized most of their quotes. For me, it was all new then, so I didn't really get the whole thing going on, but I kind of understood what was going on in a way. When I mean I didn't get it, like practically I couldn't do it. So it's just like what we saw in the last chapter that talked about the fact that initially you start by maybe copy pasting. The second words, you start reading documentation and getting what's going on. And the third point, this time around, you have a full idea of what this functions and that function do. So for me, I really didn't get the whole thing. I remember chapter 18 was like an eye opener for me because that was when I saw how you could use you could generate a UI through data. So Shiny modules are not really gone gone full depth in it. But the only what I was thinking was actually module was being able to like use maybe you have several other R scripts that you don't want to be in the Shiny app. You could have them somewhere else, and you could use this the function source source, and you could get those R scripts to come in, and they will run first, and possibly you need maybe a particular data from there or something, or imported data also. You could get them to work. So but going through the chapter again, because I just came through it during the last week during the week. Let me just say last week because that was when I did it. I saw that okay, this whole thing is actually at another level, and I need to sit down and take more time to really go through it properly. So it's not really an in-depth knowledge because that's why I decided I was going to revisit the book. So that's one of the reasons I'm here to like get what's going on as in as regards Shiny model. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, that I agree. I think that's where I was in my introduction to Shiny modules. You said like functions too, like you're looking at examples and at first you're like copy pasting and then maybe you're switching one thing here or there to get it to fit your needs, and then diving into the documentation and then like really getting comfortable with it. Yeah, I think that matches my experience too. I actually wasn't really aware of Shiny modules and the concept until last year when I began my new job and I started at a new role when I developed apps at my previous job. I was very structured in like one single app, and it was complex. And this really opened my eye to being able to create a more structured app and experience, and not have it be as crazy. So yeah, that was kind of my experience. My first code assignment for for interview. The interview process was to like modularize a portion of the app. So that was kind of new to me, but definitely something that makes your apps a lot. It improves your apps a lot, and being able to use this in your tool belt is very helpful. Yeah, so I guess with that, my plan for the rest of our time was to kind of go over the notes, look at maybe go into some of the concepts in the chapter, and the Shiny modules chapter and engineering Shiny was really helpful as well. So might take a look at that for a little bit, and then go into some examples to see what that looks like in practice. Yeah, so that sounds good. And keep going. So this is a good follow-up to chapter 18 because Shiny modules are very similar to functions. Basically, what you're trying to do is, or at least one of the things that you're trying to do is to make it reusable. A common phrase in computer science or in the data world is dry or don't repeat yourself. So like functions, if you have code that you want to use multiple times, that could be something that you write into a module, so you're not repeating yourself. You make it easier to digest. So yeah, it makes it not only more readable, but it's easier to debug too. You only have to worry about you can like test each module on their own. So you're breaking down this complex structure and dividing it into smaller parts. And so the book said modules are kind of a miniature app within a larger app. They isolate a particular group of inputs and outputs, and just like full Shiny apps, they have a UI part and a server part. So yeah, again, a good follow-up to the functions chapter, because it allows us to break up our code, makes it more digestible, and avoids some repetition. So I mentioned the engineering Shiny book. I saw that previous cohorts went into Golem and a little bit in the differences between Golem and the Mastering Shiny book. So it's very similar. This is something you don't necessarily need to know, but I have a feeling, I didn't look ahead, but I have a feeling that Golem might come up again in the next chapter, because because with Golem, you're actually building a package for your app. So I have a feeling that Golem will come up next week for the packages chapter. But anyway, some of the differences are the naming convention, the Golem approach uses snake case and all lowercase words, breaking up with the snake case. And for it actually puts mod in there, so you know it's a module, and either UI or server, depending on which one you create. Actually, when Golem itself is a package, so when you want to create a module using Golem, there's actually a function for it. And I suppose I can R my own R code. This is actually the code that I was editing last year for part of the interview process, and I'm still in the process of rewriting this. There was a huge monolithic app, and now it's getting rewritten, so it's all modularized and taking advantage of the Golem package. So the way it's structured is there's several different modules. They all have their own R file. But you can see here, like this is how the UI and the server get written out Golem style. So really, there's not a huge difference other than just like syntax and preference on how you want to do that. I do think it's nice because, you know, like you're dealing with a module, and personally, I think snake case is easier to read. But yeah, that's kind of how it looks like inside of an app. I think there were like some really interesting notes here as well. Okay. So in addition, not sure if either of you were able to get through the chapter, but there's also a video here from Eric Nance about modules at the 2019 RStudio conference. I didn't get a chance to watch. I might have seen that earlier, but I didn't get a chance to watch that. But that is also a good example and good materials to draw from. But this, like, the idea was taking this like complex app, a lot of different moving pieces, and see like some of these processes are being repeated, like settings, different select different parts are selecting in different areas. Excuse me. So taking that to using modules, they were able to simplify it dramatically compared to what it was. So yeah, you see like the yellow parts, those are repeated, as well as like the blue parts. Just makes it easier. Let's see. I'm going. I'm going back and forth quite a bit, so apologies for that. Why this is highlighted, but oh well. But yeah, I do want to share a few of these parts from the Engineering Shiny book, just because I thought they were so helpful in understanding me, or helping me understand, the reasoning and the motivation, not just for the reducing complexity, but also, why it doesn't just make sense in having your code in like one area, like functions, but specifically Shiny modules also make it a lot easier because of this right here. So Shiny requires outputs and inputs to have a unique ID. If you have like one large monolithic app and you're using, you have multiple outputs and inputs, and you need each of those to have a unique ID. That can get complicated really quickly because if you use same ID for different outputs or inputs, then you can have name clashing. So you might be familiar with that if you they have multiple packages installed in R and they have the same function name. You may have gotten that error before where it warns you that there's a function for this package and a function for this package, and they're named the same thing. So there's like a name clash there. This is very similar to that concept. So unfortunately, this isn't just a Shiny problem. This is a problem that's not unique to Shiny. So IDs are not Shiny specific. They're at the root of how web pages work. So I don't want to get like too deep into this, but just to show you more motivation. So the need to be unique is made a little bit complex by the way Shiny handles names, as it shares a global pool for all the ID names. So it says with no native way to use namespaces. So this is a concept for basically breaking down that global pool of IDs and making like separate areas for IDs. So you can have the same ID in different namespaces or the separate tiny pools, and it will work versus having the same ID inside the global pool. That's what we want to avoid. So that's where the namespaces come in. And like I said, this is similar to if you have two different functions with the same name from different packages. That's also a problem faced with that. So it's very similar. So modules actually, they solve this problem. They create small namespaces where you can safely define IDs without conflicting with others inside the app. I know that was a lot. Any questions over namespaces or like motivation for creating modules? Yeah, if not, I do. Oh, Matthew, was that you? Do you have?
Yeah, I was saying you could go on,
something?
Trevin.
Okay.
You could go on.
Yeah. So I mean, I did drop the link to this in the chat. So like if you want to take after the meeting or hold on to that as a bookmark, this is also a good resource. And when I read this, it helped click a little bit. Excuse me. Yeah, so this the book also goes into it a bit as well. A slight difference in the UI versus the server. In the module UI, namespacing is explicit. You have to call namespace, ID, and name every time you create input or output. And then in the module server, the namespacing is implicit. You only need to use ID in the call to module server, and it automatically namespaces input and output. So a slight difference there. Just different things to be aware of. So I am going to go into some examples here. I think the first one, again, apologies for going back and forth. Okay, so the first one I wanted to cover was this first example. It's just right now it's just a simple, very simple app that draws a histogram. And, you know, right now, you wouldn't necessarily have to create a module for this one just because there's not a lot of inputs or outputs. It's, you can understand it, it's only 15 lines, but it's a good example to show how modules actually work. So we'll see this in what this looks like in practice. We have a couple puts, selecting a variable from empty cars, selecting the number of bins we want to show, and then a simple histogram plotted from our inputs. Okay. So if we want to create a modular version of this app, we need a UI and a module server. So we put the UI inside a function that has an ID argument and wrap each existing ID in a call to namespace. So our modularized version of this app looks like this. So here's our UI. This is the mastering shiny naming convention. And then we just have a tag list of our inputs and then our plot output. And then you see the call to the module here. Okay, and then the tag list, special type of layout function, and it's responsibility of the person calling this function to wrap it in a column or fluid row. And then our server, we don't have to explicitly name the ID. Oh, the namespace, excuse me. So it takes care of that automatically. Input var and input bins refer to the inputs with names, bar and bins. And then we write a function to generate an app. That's what this looks like, our UI and server and the different modules. And then if you had multiple modules, like it might look like something like this. But here we just have the two that we're dealing with. I'm not sure if either of you went through and worked on any of the examples, but I was curious that like this file automatically detects that it's a Shiny app, but this does not. I went through and ran it after highlighting. So I thought that was curious and wasn't sure if there was a different way to do that. But it's very it's the same app. It's just the back end is structured in a way that takes advantage of the modules. Oh, and then the note here was interesting. If you used Shiny before 2020, you might have learned the call module function. And since Shiny 1.5, they converted to module server. So they're identical, except the arguments are flipped. So the difference is largely superficial for this simple app, but module server makes more complicated modules with arguments considerably easier to understand. So again, namespacing takes advantage of the modules and making it easier to create names that don't clash with each other. You're working with multiple developers. This also comes in handy. Just some naming conventions. You can put the module file inside your R folder, and it holds all the code for the module. Histogram UI is the module UI if it's primarily for input or output. Hadley changes it to histogram input or histogram out, should be output. And then histogram app creates an app, and histogram server, the module server. I thought this exercise question was interesting. Excuse me. Why is it good practice to put a module in its own file in the R directory? What do you need to make sure it's loaded by your Shiny app? Any thoughts on why it might be good practice to put it in its own file?
That I think I would say from modularity point of view, in the sense that for the same reason, right? The reason why we create modules is to make it more readable and easy to debug. And so when you pull it out in a separate script of its own, I think that whole concept of why it was created becomes all the more relevant. And the reason why you want to put it in R directory is, or not just, and I don't think this is, I mean, I've used it for other scripts as well, like not even modules. I'm not too conversant with modules myself, but for other scripts, when I put that inside R, so in one of the recent versions of Shiny, what happens is now when any script that you put in R is auto-loaded. So you don't have to write source function calls to the scripts that you're using for, let's say, data loading or data cleansing and whatnot. Anything that's inside the R directory and of your app, it's just auto-loaded, and that saves you a few more lines of code. That's my understanding.
Awesome. Yeah. First off, yeah, welcome, Priyanka. I think you nailed it pretty well. Definitely helpful for testing and outlining your code and making it more readable. And yeah, I think you also nailed it with auto loading. Yeah, as you said, interesting. Also, welcome, Lucio. I see you joined as well. I had the solutions up as well. Yeah, it's good. It's a good practice because of namespaces, spaces of names that are isolated from the rest of the app. Each module is an individual component in isolation from the other modules in the app. Okay, because you can write, analyze, and test individual components in isolation. Yeah, I think Priyanka went over that. When you have the UI and server functions, you need to write a function that uses them to generate an app.
Sorry about that. I think I just
Okay.
got kicked out, or was it my internet maybe? I think then you were just sort of saying something to me. I got disconnected.
Yeah, I was just saying that you nailed it, Priyanka. The solution also went over the benefits of namespacing, having each module in its own separate file.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, it looks like we have a little bit of time left. The rest of the chapter, I think we went over the importance and the why, and definitely some of the more important takeaways from this chapter, and then like the rest of it was some examples as well. In the inputs and outputs section, as well as some different case studies. Let me go here. This is one more example in the chapter on different radio buttons and having another input for the user to like write in their own option. So this example is going as the UI, it has the server, as well as several different inputs for the function itself. For the UI function specifically, I should say. So this Shiny app, you feed it a label. In this context, yeah, the previous notes weren't very extensive. I think a lot of this is just going over the examples in the book. Apologies, I need to. Here we go. So this example in the book, the label was, how do you usually read CSV files? And then several input options for the radio buttons or other. So that would be the label. The choices would be what you want the user to select, and then they can select other as well. Okay, so I actually used what's your favorite color, and then the choices. So that's what that looks like as well. Yeah, the only other thing I want to go over is maybe this last part. I'm not sure if I had this reaction myself, but some people, when introduced to modules, might have it. They immediately attempt to combine the module server and module UI into a single module object. So this can be problematic. Then Hadley goes over an example into why this might be problematic. Seems undesirable that we have to repeat both the ID and the name of the data set in both the UI and the server, so it's natural to want to wrap it up into one. So one, it doesn't work because module server must be called inside a server function. But imagine the problem didn't exist or you worked around it some other way. There's still a big problem. What if we want to allow the user to select the data set, i.e. we want to make VF argument reactive? That can't work because the module is instantiated before the server function, before we know that information. So that's why you don't want to use a single object. So yeah, we were able to see the benefits of using Shiny modules into using reusable code and making things less complex and simplifying apps. Definitely a powerful technique. And in the next chapter, we're going to learn how to take advantage of structuring a Shiny app like a package. Any thoughts or questions? Priyanka and Lucio, I know. I don't know if you got a chance to share your Shiny modules experience, but if you want to go over that or anything you learned from this chapter, yeah, feel free to.
Well, I have one question. It wasn't fully clear to me why did we need to use the NS function, the namespace function for the IDs of the elements that we define, whether for the UI, no, sorry, for the UI, when we are creating some code in a separate file for the Shiny app, why do we have to use NS?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure when you joined, Lucia. Sorry. Because okay, so for example, for the UI, the namespace is supposed to be explicit, where we actually call it out. I'm not sure. I guess the answer is I'm not sure why it has to be explicit for the UI and implicit for the server. That's a good question. Not sure if I also shared earlier the engineering Shiny chapter on modules. It also goes into namespacing. It explains namespacing into a little more detail. Not sure if I'm not sure if it went beyond just it's a way that you can define IDs without conflicting other IDs in the app. I'm not sure if it went beyond that and explained explicitly why it needs to be in the UI versus the server. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure about that question, and I'm not sure if I helped.
I just wanted to say this, but I don't know if this would also help in any way. When I first encountered the Shiny modules, the understanding of it that I got, I tried to like see if I can understand it like at the barest minimum. So what I understood from it was, for example, if we were to have to call a model, it's like, let's say you have more than 3 people bearing maybe Matthew somewhere. You want to call a specific Matthew. Let's say you want to call Matthew Foley or Matthew James. Using the namespace and putting the right attribute in the bracket afterwards makes you call the exact module you're after. That is like what I understood from it before. And I just wanted to see how I can build on that knowledge and really understand what exactly that really meant. So I don't know if that could help in clarifying in any way, Lucio, but if it didn't, I think we could just still look at the past cohort, what the past cohort did. But that was just the best way I could understand it, because initially what I'm just doing now is like understanding it at the lay terms, then build on that and later get really in depth what these things actually mean in depth.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. I have to look at the previous cohort session as well.
Okay, that'll be great. Does anyone else have something to say about that?
No, I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay, so we would meet next week. I don't think anyone signed up for chapter 20 yet. That means I might have to take it. Okay, so Trevin already give a heads up about column. Somebody want to say something?
Yeah, I just unmuted. So yeah, I think I had signed up for not the next one, but the one following that. But now I just switched it for the last two chapters. I am thinking of combining those two chapters though. So I wasn't sure if someone's combining the next two, but yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay, so next week will be talking on chapter and packages. I think at this point the chapters get into the get a bit more complex and it's taking more time for covering the chapters, getting to understand what's really going on in depth. And I just hope when we are done with this, we can still like check all the resources and get more understanding of it. And I hope we build basic apps and build apps so that we don't just let go of this knowledge in the long run. I want to say thank you, everyone. Thank you, Priyanka, for joining. I want to say thank you especially because there was this video of yours that I watched that got me to know about the Data Explorer package. And that has really helped me in exploring data, working on EDAs whenever I have to work on a project, even the recent project I had to work on. I think you
Thank
had that Shiny conference with the boosting group. I don't know, it's a long-term video, so
Yeah,
thank you.
2020.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you more so you can give your contributions. And thank you, Lucia, for making our time. Thank you, Lydia, for coming around. Thank you, Trevin. Thank you for giving us all the resources. That's the other book, the chapter 3 of the other book. I think the one by Colin Fay. Still find time to go through most of this, and I want to say thank you, guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.